Hey food fans, welcome to Cooking Like a Pro with Chef Cal and me, Mrs. Chef, his wife Christa DeMercurio. We're dishing out culinary intuition, insights, and imagination to spice up your meals and make cooking more fun. On today's episode, my chef husband and I discuss Mexican cuisine, cooking a variety of grains, cooling your leftovers safely, and shellfish and different types of clams. Let's dig in. Today's episode was broadcast and recorded live on AM/FM radio.
Welcome one and all to Cooking Like a Pro. You have found us, Chef Cal and Mrs. Chef Christa here to talk about.
Hello.
You know, Mexican, Hispanic food. It's just something that always goes good when it chills down outside.
Spicy.
Yeah. Spicy. Warm. And they always say don't touch the plates when you go to a Mexican restaurant.
That's true.
Which, of course, I always touch the plates because I can't feel anything on my fingertips anyway, you know. But
I remember the very first time I had heard, experienced, tasted, smelled sizzling fajitas.
Oh, yeah.
They were walking by, literally sizzling, and it was everybody would stop and look.
Yeah.
That was like back in the 80s those became popular.
Yeah, very festive. And again, we talked about last week that, you know, 80% of what you taste, you're actually not tasting, you're smelling.
Yeah, and you get those bell peppers and onions.
I mean, unless you have the non-ability to smell, I don't know. I want to smell, I want to taste, okay? And
that's what happens when you're sick and you have a cold. You know, that's why you can't taste your food and you go to crackers and chicken noodle soup.
There you go. So Mexican food. So I thought this would be fun. So I went online and I've got proof. And you're going to want to, we're taping this, right? The internet is not right about everything. I found that out today. Yep. I went to it and I said, okay, top 10 Mexican food items in the United States. Number 1 was nachos.
What?
Yeah. Then it went down to burritos and quesadillas. But I'll tell you, in the top 10, you know what wasn't there?
Tacos.
A taco. So then I go and I thought, well, that seems kind of strange. So I Googled, the top 10 foods in Mexico, and number 1 was taco. One of the biggest chains, you know, restaurants like in the history of the United States, you know, besides McDonald's, it's probably Taco Bell, right? It's a taco.
Maybe it's because nachos have become popular as an appetizer in a lot of the big family restaurants like Applebee's, and maybe that's it. The nacho, because now they got nacho fries and. But
what I like soft tacos. You know, soft tacos, the fish tacos. I know we had I had some red snap rice seasoned, and we made those fish tacos a couple of weeks ago. And really, if you can barbecue it, then you can get that added flavor.
The smokiness.
And you don't need to add a lot. And actually, this was something else I looked up. It's the number 1, you know, food item was a mole poblano, and there's literally between 25 to 30 ingredients in it.
Oh yeah, all moles.
Yeah.
And mole is not a chocolate sauce.
It's peanut and chocolate is 2 of the big contributing factors.
That can be in it.
Then there's also like 8 different chilies. I mean, it goes on. And there's seeds in there, and there's there. And I was looking at several different recipes, and I was thinking, see, when I take a bite of something, I want to be able to enjoy a balance of all those flavors. Okay, so I take a bite of a chicken pot pie. I want to taste the chicken. I want to taste the carrots, the celery, whatever, you know, if you got, you know, diced potatoes, whatever you've got in there. When I take a bite of that, well, if I want to taste the salsa, and I found something out. I was talking to Mom today, and I didn't know this. I literally thought, I did not look it up on the internet, but we have something in our house, and it's just a simple, we were raised on this. And it came from my Grandpa Gross. And it was just tomatoes, onions, and jalapenos. And Grandpa used to go down and visit with family in Mexico all the time, him and Grandma. And they put it on everything. So Grandpa coined the term Mexican butter. Oh. And that's where it came from. So I've always just called this Mexican butter. And basically, it's just a super simple salsa. And you put it on everything like in America we would use butter. Mm-hmm. Down there they put what they call Mexican butter. There's no butter in it. It's just used like butter.
Yeah, spread it across the top. Yeah.
Yeah, so we got to make sure that Grandpa gets credit for that. Yeah.
But did you know that mole, actually translated English, just means sauce? So guacamole, it's a sauce. It's an avocado sauce. Guaca is avocado, mole is sauce.
I don't know. For me, I judge a Mexican restaurant on its chile relleno, because my mom makes the best chile relleno, and I was raised on it. And what it is it's most of the time they'll take the egg whites, which is with the batter they dip a chile relleno in. They'll take the poblano, you know, throw it over the heat, and then put it in a bag or put it in a covered bowl so you can peel the outside exterior off. And then you stuff that with jack cheese, which you hardly even see jack cheese anymore. And then you just dip that in an egg batter, but it's really just whisked up eggs. In a Mexican restaurant, they do it they whip the eggs and the egg whites until it's just as foamy, and what you end up getting is this pillow.
So it's an egg white batter? It's not, it got flour in it?
Oh, I don't know what they do. They whisk it up, and imagine you flour it first. Could be wet, dry, wet. And then are they deep fried? Because I've never eaten them. Well, they deep fry them, but my mom doesn't. She pan fries them.
Oh, okay.
And they're so good, but there's a lot of substance. There's chili, and there's cheese, and there's a little bit of an egg coating. You don't have this massive thing. Just you have to, dig through to get to the good stuff that's in the center. So anyway, Mom, thank you for everything you do. Chicken enchiladas and chili rellenos, and we know now that Grandpa's the one that coined the term Mexican butter. So
well, I need to talk to your mom, because she was talking about when she learned how to make. She would take cans to chop things up with and cut things. Yeah,
well, it was different. There used to be only one size can of tomato, so it's been different. A big change on that too. So we're going to go and take a quick break here, but you've got Chef Cal and Mrs. Chef Christa on Cooking Like a Pro. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to Cooking Like a Pro, and I'm Chef Cal with my wife, Miss Chef Christa, and with that, they had a commercial in the middle there with Black Bear Diner, and I was their corporate chef for a couple of years, and I actually ran into their corporate chef. I think he's been doing it since he had a different title, but I think that's what he is. But anyway, Chef Juan ran into him the other day.
They just keep growing and growing and growing, expanding.
I think they're 160. I think they were at 60 when I was a part of the team, and now they've
just blown up.
Either 160, 170. Yeah. Good home style meals. But it's just the thing that's so cool is that it started here.
Yeah.
It started
in Mount Shasta, right?
Mount Shasta, and then also after that down here in Redding, and that's where it exploded. But
homegrown
and great variety. So yep. They got my endorsement, Black Bear Diner. I always check it out. And I talked to the health department the other day. So what we have is something that's called the danger zone, and when you're in a restaurant, and you need to be aware of this at home. It's not complicated, but for food safety, standards, just certain things you need to know. And basically there's what we call a danger zone. And food either needs to be under it or over it. So that danger zone a number of years ago was 45 degrees on the bottom side. So refrigerators generally run right around 40, 38, somewhere in there. And then if it was hot, it had to be above 140 and held 140. 140, 145 is what's considered hot. If you take a bite of soup and it's nice and hot, but it doesn't burn your tongue, then it's right around that 144, 145 area. If you're temping your soup, that's what you want to serve it at, or serve it maybe a little hotter. Make sure your bowls are warm and make sure you get it to them quickly. But that lower temperature has dropped, and I think it's because I know there's an E. coli, listeria, there's, a lot of things that are going on. There's different things like, salmonella and trichinosis from pork. So there's a number of different bacteria contamination. So things can be, contaminated in basically three different ways, right? Physically, something physically drops in there, or chemically, that you use bleach or something like that in an area you're not supposed to. And the other one is being contaminated
by bacteria.
And
so the easy number of 40 to 140 is gone now because it's going to drop down to 35. So now we go down to 35 to 140.
Yeah. So I don't know if you need to turn your refrigerators down, but one of the main things that people, I would say, focus on is cooling your food down quickly. Whatever your leftovers are, cool them down quickly. The recommendation is to cool it within 2-hour period, cool it down to 70 degrees before you put it in your refrigerator.
Mm-hmm. Then wrap it and put it away.
Yeah, and because if you make a gallon of something, and you stick it hot, just off the stove, and then that means everything in your refrigerator, the entire temperature goes up to whatever goes up to, 120 or whatever, and then it goes up into that danger zone, and then bacteria is going to grow.
So what you can do is, if you have a big pot of soup, is start breaking it down into smaller containers so that they can cool down faster, more surface area, and then even ice. The restaurant, they got the ice wand. I don't know if you can get a hold of something like that for home use.
Well, so I'm sure that they can. Basically, it's just a plastic device. Let's just imagine something like a small baseball bat, and it's hollow. It's heavy plastic, and you fill it full of water, and then you freeze it, and then you just stick it in there. It's called an ice wand. What I used to do, like if I was going to make, I was making a cream sauce, and I was making like 40 gallons of it. I would just make it a little bit tighter. I'd make it a little bit tighter, and I would enhance the flavor of the cream sauce. And then when it was done, I just dump a bucket of ice in it.
Yeah,
and it goes down. You don't need 2 hours; it goes down in like 2 minutes. And get it down to that temperature, and get it in the box. But one of the best ways I think that you can tell is if there's anything in your, if you ever see anything in your refrigerator that has condensation underneath the lid, then it was covered and it went in there too hot.
Yeah, so try and get it down to at least to room temperature.
Yeah, before you put it in, and then, or you can cover it and leave a little opening, because you need to let that heat out. That's the whole idea with it. But the temperature range is good. Everything, they recommend getting everything up to 160 degrees to eat it, but then again, that's really unnecessary. For one, seafood's only 145, but beef goes anywhere from, 120 degrees to 120 to 125 is rare, and then 160 is well done. And basically it goes up about 8 or 9 degrees, for rare, medium well done. So, if you need to buy from purveyors that you trust, because if not, because you can't cook all your steaks, 160. If you had a prime rib house and you cooked everything 160, nobody would come, right? Because everything's well done.
So then you need to get things out of the fridge, cooked, served, and then cooled back down faster, because you're never going to get it up to that 140 range if you're staying under 140, like 120.
Yeah, so keep it cool down. Best practices for sanitation and safety. Let's see. Wash your hands. That's always the first thing to do, right? Always wash your hands, and just be aware of cross-contamination. If you're cutting on a cutting board and you're cutting a protein, especially something like poultry, then get rid of that cutting board and use an entirely different cutting board for cutting your vegetables.
And sometimes just have, a cutting board that is the vegetable cutting board, another cutting board that is the poultry cutting board, another one that is your seafood cutting board.
That's a great point, because in the restaurant business, we have a different colored cutting board. So, yellow board is for chicken. Green is for cutting up produce. Red is for cutting up meat. So it's easy to do. So, at least the same thing's being cut on that. But then again, you always have
And that's if you have plastic cutting boards. And plastic cutting boards, you can sanitize heavily with bleach and run through the dishwasher and get that extreme heat to clean them, which is different than a wood cutting board, which can't go through the dishwasher. So it's a little different process to care for them.
I can confirm at Odell's, the plastic ones go through the normal dish and they get sanitizer, but you can't put the wooden one in sanitizer because it's bad for the wood.
Correct. It will dry it out.
Well, to dry it out, also it will soak in the sanitizer it can as well. So
it will absorb the flavor and the smell and the
Well, I think the bigger thing on the wood cutting boards though is they just start falling apart. You know, if you start running them through a machine, they'll just start falling apart.
Oh yeah, no, there's
wood and water don't work. But just think about the best practices. Think about the cross contamination. Make sure you're cooling stuff down. Look at sell by dates. You know, these are very simple things. You just got to get in a habit when you buy something. Know how long, I mean, I'm not going to buy something that has 4 days left on it when I'm not going to use it until, next week, a week later, because it only has 4 days of what we call shelf life before it needs to be cooked.
And I think we have, kind of changed the way that we buy, especially with Costco and with COVID. We try and stock up. And I think we have way too much food in our households, to be quite honest, to be safe, because they're going to expire before you can actually get to them and cook them.
Yeah. I think that being in control on your inventory, but you don't really think that. I mean, in a restaurant business, we think about it all the time because that's what we do. And we do inventory. We see what we have, and everything rotates. You can find, I remember the other day I was looking through a box of seasonings that I had kind of set off. I don't even know what restaurant they came from, one of ours. And, I mean, there were seasonings in there that were like from the Reagan administration, I mean, you're thinking that it's probably not gonna, but so just keep an eye on it. And also with your seasonings, make sure that they're in airtight containers. Because almost always in a kitchen, you're going to have
heat and moisture.
Which is humidity, and that humidity does not help anything when it comes into your seasonings.
Well, that's why usually you have the dry storage in a restaurant. It's away from the humidity. It's kind of the cooler back part of the kitchen. Yeah,
but at home, your seasonings are just generally fairly next to the stove, fairly close.
Yeah,
and so the heat, the humidity, and then also the color, the darkness. You really want to get seasonings that are in a darker container because light will destroy things as well.
Oh, there's another thing that you probably should take care of is if your seasonings are in a cabinet that has under cabinet lighting, the light will emit heat, and sometimes you can reach in those cabinets and they're warm. And if you got your seasonings on top of those cabinets with those lights, it's not good for them.
Yeah, well, again, the kitchen design. Well, I've done enough of it. But, again, so food safety, real important. You don't want anyone getting sick, especially with the holidays coming up. And you got Thanksgiving, and there's just so much food, and you got to start divvying it up, because there's just no room in the fridge. But, portioning. Think about, okay, how much of this do I need to make? And then also secondary uses. I get a roasted chicken, and you have it with mashed potatoes and gravy, and then you slice it up, the breast up, and now you have a great protein for a sandwich. And then by the time, maybe you cook some up in an omelet, something along those lines, and then finally you make some chicken noodle soup. So you've taken one item and been able to find multiple uses for it. So when you're buying something, kind of think about that. How much am I buying, and how much are we going to literally eat? And
if you're not going to use it in a few days, just go ahead and go, you know what, I'm going to break this down and freeze it so I can use it for future applications. If you can't use an entire whole chicken within a week, go ahead and freeze it.
Yeah. But the thing about freezing, remember, your freezer is not a hospital. Okay? A freezer is not a hospital. Food doesn't go into a freezer and come out better. It goes into a freezer and comes out the same as it went in. So if it's not good, don't freeze it, throw it away. So just be sensitive to that. But anyway, I think that if you just basically have an open mind and take a common sense approach at it and look up the information if you need it, but just make sure that you're keeping your food safe. And then when there's recalls, be aware of those. And that's an important thing to know too. I know that they've got a few of those going on now. Well, there's always recalls going on in the food industry. But anyway, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be back in just a moment. You have found us on Cooking Like a Pro. Welcome back to Cooking Like a Pro. And I swung by. I mentioned this to you, Morse flour. I started thinking about the grains are so simple, but I think they get complicated because all of a sudden you start seeing. Okay, yes, we're familiar with rice. But I've heard of couscous. Well, how do you make polenta? And farro and quinoa There's just, oats, wild rice. There's a lot of things that are out there. But it's really the ratio that you're looking at. And the ratio is how much, liquid or stock, which is just flavored liquid, to actual grain. And like couscous, for example, it's just 2 to 1. It only takes like 5 minutes. You got a simmering stock, 2 cups of stock. You throw in a cup of couscous, stir it around, shut it off. 5 minutes, your grain is done. Your starch is done. And it's a great flavor. I mean, you can add vegetables and flavorings and seasonings and spices.
So in general, it's 2 parts water to 1 part of the grain or starch. Now, what's interesting is, it's different rices, though. Like Cal Rose rice, I need a little bit more water to get to the doneness level I want. But a jasmine or a basmati rice takes less water.
Yeah.
So you kind of play around with it.
Yeah. Well, the less rice on the basmati or the jasmine really has to do with, because those are used in Asian applications, they want the grains to stay separate. So all you got to think about is the more moisture you put in there, the more that grain is going to absorb. And I know that when it comes to polenta, for example, some people say 2 to 1. Well, if I wanted to make polenta and put it on like a cookie sheet when I was done and cut it in pieces and fry it in butter and, do something like that, I'd want it thicker. But if I want a creamy polenta, I know I made that sea bass dish once with the Roma tomato relish on top. Mm-hmm. And it was a smoked Chilean sea bass with this Roma tomato relish. And underneath it was a soft polenta. It was actually made with gorgonzola cheese. So that was 3 to 1. So it does depend on the use, but practice. But you're right. Generally, it's 2 to 1, and when we say 2 to 1, we mean parts. So a part is just a volume or a weight. Doesn't really matter. It's just that if it's 2 of something, then it's 1 of something else. So it's 2 cups of water, it's 1 cup. If it's 4 pounds of a weighted product, then it would be 2 pounds. Would make it 2 to 1.
Now, doing a risotto style, where you're just continuously adding little bits of water, how does that change things other than just one big old bulk pot of water that you dump something into?
Yeah. Well, the thing about risotto is that's one that's a little bit more unique. That will take about real close to 4 to 1, real close to 4 times stock to 1 part rice, because a boreal rice has more starch in it. And because it has high starch, it absorbs more. Plus, it's a short grain rice, so it absorbs more. And then you cook it slowly, and because you add the stock to that. You're not just saying, okay, I'm going to throw in 1 cup of rice and 2 cups of stock, and I'm going to make rice. If you had vegetables in there, it'd actually be what they call rice pilaf. That's what the French would call it. But you really want to get a boreal? I mean, you probably use anything for like a creamed rice dish, but a boreal is going to be creamy. That starch that's left in there is going to be creamy. A lot of people also might rinse their rice.
Yeah, to get rid of the starchiness or the stickiness.
Rinse it to get some of that out of there. But sometimes there's particles in there. It can remove impurities. Also, rinsing your rice will make it more fluffy. Because once that starch is rinsed out, and basically when you rinse it, you just rinse it in a sieve or a colander that that's fine enough so your grain doesn't go through it. You don't need to rinse, and we're talking about rice now, all right? I mean, you don't need to rinse couscous or polenta or barley's a good one. Quinoa, those things don't need to get rinsed. But when you rinse your rice, it actually there is an amount of arsenic actually in rice, and rinsing it will remove that. Not enough to be harmful. I mean, I guess put it this way: if you're an American, you average. Now, again, we've already proven that the internet is false, but according to the internet, the average American eats 27 pounds of rice a year.
Really?
So, in a very sense, that's the average. And then, so I looked up, China, of course, because, they're a rice nation. 221 pounds a year.
Oh, my goodness.
221 pounds a year.
I don't think I eat 27 pounds of rice.
Well, you might not.
I definitely eat more potatoes.
Yeah. But, it does have a great nutritional value. There's all kinds of essential minerals and vitamins in rice. But just be careful and make sure that you got your ratio correct. Again, if I want something that's more of probably what I'd call like a porridge consistency. Yeah, a porridge consistency would be, that's what I would do with the polenta.
So here's something interesting I learned. So I grew up, with oatmeal, and my grandma used to call oatmeal mush.
Okay.
Because it's mushy. And usually, like on the Quakers, it's usually about the 2-to-1, more water. Well, I grew up, and I learned from a friend's mom. Her name was Mary, so I call it Mary's oatmeal. She had a completely different way of doing it. She would bring her water to a boil, then add her oatmeal, old-fashioned oatmeal, not quick oats, and then just shut it off and let it absorb the water. And it completely changed my life, I'm telling you. I don't like mushy oatmeal. I love this flaky oatmeal that comes out, but it's half the amount of water, so it's a completely different preparation, but it's still cooked. Yeah. But it completely changes the flavor profile, the texture of it.
I think that, and there's so many different variations that are out there, and it's a healthy alternative, because basically what you're talking about is something to be different than just eating potatoes in whatever form that you want. And they're much more healthy to go with the grain. And most of the time in a potato, they say that up to 95 or more % of nutritional value of a potato is in the peel.
In the skin.
And if you eat a baked potato, you generally, most people don't eat the exterior. So the vitamins and minerals, the nutrients that are in the potato are not even being consumed.
But you also have to be careful with potatoes, because if the potato is grown too close to the surface and there's that little hint of green, that there's this bitter, biting taste to it, and it is actually toxic to you.
Yeah,
you should not eat those.
Now,
I can pick it up so quickly when it took potatoes too close to the surface. It's a totally different flavor profile.
Yeah, my dad grows potatoes.
Yeah.
I don't know too many people that grow potatoes. I don't know why he grows potatoes, but he does, and they're delicious, and you can tell the difference. So
they're very creamy.
Maybe that's why he does it. Yeah, but
So we have farro, and I've been wanting to cook it, but I'm scared of it.
Yeah, farro's about 3-to-1. But again, it's just stock and product, stock and grain. And again, so on farro you're 3-to-1. You can also cook it like, if you've heard the term converted. Converted just means that they cook it and then they shock it in ice water.
It's par cooked.
Yeah, so it's par cooked. And so it's going to cook a lot faster. You see, like Uncle Ben's has stuff like that. But anyway, we're going to be coming back for a moment. We're going to take our last break here. But we appreciate you tuning in here, Cooking Like a Pro, and we'll be back in just a moment. Okay, well, welcome back. Hey, we're already to the final segment here, Cooking Like a Pro, with, again, Chef Cal and Mrs. Chef Christa. And I was going through this health thing regarding the change and the danger zone and stuff, and for some reason I got off on this tangent about allergies, and I was looking up that the number one thing that most people are allergic to, and it's actually crustaceans. We're not talking about things that they just don't like to eat, but crustaceans. And out of crustaceans, so shellfish again is separated into 2 categories: crustaceans and mollusks. Mollusk has either 1 or 2 shells, right? So oysters, clams, snails, scallops. Crustaceans are multi-segmented, so that's where you have your shrimp and your crab and your lobster. I am so glad I'm not allergic to crustaceans. We wouldn't have been able to eat at the sardine factory.
There you go. So if you have a seafood allergy or a shellfish allergy, so seafood and shellfish are technically different, right? Fish and shellfish, are there different allergies, or there are different things?
Yeah. Well, there's shellfish, and then there's the second category of seafood is called finfish.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So that's where you get salmon, trout, halibut. Whatever.
But are there categories of allergies within those, or are you just allergic to seafood, period, or is it the shellfish specifically?
Usually it's the shellfish. And my thought on it would always be that it's because of where it came from. But if a person is allergic to it, they're allergic to it. And one of the things that a lot of people don't realize, because one of my sons is deathly allergic to shrimp.
Yeah, all of a sudden we found that out.
Yeah. But there's a reason that they don't find out until later in life. Because when you're young, you don't try these things. All right. And I think it has to do with processing and all kinds of stuff that's going on out there. Because I don't remember people having allergies. I really don't.
Yeah, 30
Just like I don't
ago.
remember people having, all kinds of things that people seem to be, either allergic to or they're affected
different.
by. So a lot of things have changed, but crustaceans, if you don't eat them till you're older now, I started eating, when I first was able to start eating, when I was young, we ate everything. And you have to remember, when you go back into the Midwest, it's not, seafood isn't something that's normal. I talked to a chef back in Tennessee, and he had literally never even heard of abalone, which was, strange or surprising to me because we've been around abalone our whole lives, way before I was ever born. And I looked at, abalone, they closed the abalone season back in 2017. And they're actually, right now, if they don't change it like they have been, it's set to open April 1st, 2026. April 1st, 2026.
So it might be able to be gotten again.
Yeah. Well, it would be. I don't know if we can, if the world survives till then.
Now, are they still farming abalone?
Yeah, that's how you can get it in restaurants. You can get a farm-raised abalone, but they're much smaller, and I think there's not you never get the same.
Wild caught's different.
Yeah, you never get the same flavor out of something that's done on a farm.
Okay, so what is a steamer clam? Is that different than the clams that you get in the can that goes in the clam chowder?
No. Well, it can be, but a steamer clam that I use, and you can, the term is how it's cooked. It's the cooking method. But you can use little necks, cherry stones. There's a lot of clams you can use, but I always use a manila, because a manila clam is like a medium-sized clam. A lot of them come from up around Washington. When I'm talking about shellfish, I go for the item that came from the coldest water. Remember, the coldest water is going to produce these things. The only problem you might have is if you get something that's really big, like you get a 500 or 600 pound tuna, because something that grows in the ocean that long, just gets a lot of mercury. So it can be really high in mercury, which of course isn't good for females to eat. Probably not overly good for men either, but it's definitely one of the things you want to stay away from. So I look at the size. I look at where it was caught. I look at how it was treated. Do they
have sizing like shrimp? You got your U10s and your U8s, your different size. Are there different size clams?
No, those they're about the same size of what that, like if you got, a cherry stone clam, each time they're going to be about that size. A manila clam is probably about the size of a little bigger than a quarter, maybe about the size of a $50 silver. Do they have $50? So anyway, but what I was getting at here was razor clams. Because we used to sell so many razor clams at DeMercurio's restaurant.
Now, what are they different?
And, it's a larger clam. It's similar to like a gooey neck, which we used to get gooey necks, out in the, in the bay when the water went down. You could go out there. The gooey necks, they they suck in the minerals and they spit out the sodium and some into the impurities. So if you get your head down on the sand where the water went down and you're just looking at sand or a beach, when you see the spray coming up, that's a gooey neck. And they can go fast. I don't know how they do it, but they can go really fast. So when you sneak up on one, you stick your hand down that small hole and you start digging. And matter of fact, you can grab a gooey neck and you can have its neck in your hand and it will break off and the clam will just keep going. But getting back to razor clams, the thing about it is how you treat it. And you have to be careful. It's the same as abalone. You really need to know what you're doing. You have to, there's certain parts that you pound out and there's certain parts that you don't. And then there's a certain way of breading it. Again, dry, wet, dry, usually, flour, maybe seasoned flour, an egg mix, and then a panko breadcrumb, a bigger breadcrumb. It can be an Italian breadcrumb, but you want something that's big because you want to get a real crisp product. And then 3 minutes on the top side, maybe 2 on the other, and they are delicious. We sell so many of those because it was unique. People didn't really hear razor clam. What's a razor clam? But they're big. They're kind of filleted out, and they're the size of I don't know, whatever. What kind of size would you call that?
Softball.
A softball? Maybe a little bigger softball. Yeah. But
I didn't know you could bread clams. I thought clams were little bits that you put in a soup.
Oh. Well, they can be. They can be if you want to make a clam chowder, and that's a really key point too. If you don't learn anything from today's show, when you make clam chowder, the clams go in last. They go in last because you open up a can of clams that are chopped; they're already cooked. All you got to do is bring them up to temperature. The idea isn't we want clam flavored bubble gum, right? We want just a beautiful tender clam. And I've seen people, they start with the clams, and they make their chowder, and those clams are in there. They can be in there for 2 hours, and they were already cooked. It's already dead.
Clam jerky.
It's dead. You don't have to kill it a second time, okay? You just got to bring it up to temperature. So throw your clams in towards the end. But you take a breading, like, oysters on the half shell, things like that, scallops. I mean, there's a lot of different things, and they're real versatile with seafood. It is going to be a little more expensive. You have to be careful. I try to lean towards snapper because red snapper is one of those things you used to be able to get snapper for like $2 a pound. And now it's probably the least expensive fish you can get, and it's $8 a pound. It just really just shocks me. And well, obviously that's why we don't go out to seafood restaurants. It's much easier to grab it and bring it home yourself. But again, most of these seafood items we're talking about, these, whether it's a crustacean or a mollusk, remember, they're always going to be very high in sodium. Okay? They're also all protein, like 98% protein, but they're always going to be high in sodium. So if if you're eating shellfish, you generally want to stay maybe only once a week, have shellfish once a week.
One and very important question.
Okay.
Frozen fish versus fresh fish.
You know what? A lot of times frozen's better. The key, you just have to take care of it and thaw it out overnight in the refrigerator. So you're not losing all that flavor by letting it sit out or having it, water running over it, which is called potable water. But basically, no, you want, because a lot of times they freeze it on the ship, out on the ocean. So it's, you've thawed out and it's hours old. Well, how long has it been in that cabinet?
So basically, if you fresh caught it yourself, yes, fresh fish. But you're getting some from somebody else and it's traveling, frozen.
There you go.
Thank you so much for spending time with us. Until next time, we hope you'll be cooking up a storm in the kitchen. So we'll be with you again next week with food, flavor, and fun right here on Cooking Like a Pro podcast.